Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of basically Mark Tech Reacts at this point, because as you know I don't have access to new hardware myself. My iPhone probably will be arriving sometime this week, but maybe very early next week. This is why I am reliant on watching other people test stuff, and this is honestly the kind of test that I will never do myself anyway, unless who knows how much finances would have to change before I start destroying phones for pleasure, basically. Though it doesn't give me the kind of pleasure it seems to give somebody like JerryRigEverything, though he obviously also makes his money from it, so hard to judge him for this. Yeah, we actually have a pretty big topic about durability. We have had people, I believe, like Sam from Apple Insider. Always forget, like there's so many websites with like Apple in the name, so forgive me if I'm wrong here. He did a drop test. Then we had like a bunch of other tests about it. EverythingApplePro. Now that he's no longer a regular YouTuber by any means, somehow came out of nothing. Like I think his last video was like 9 months ago, and that one came after like a year-long hiatus or something like that. And he basically unretired for this one video to test the drop resistance of the new iPhone 15 Pros. JerryRigEverything that has now 2 videos on the iPhone. Will be reacting to one of it, which is his like more general durability video, and then his other video is like focused on like, I believe, how much titanium exactly is in the iPhones. Again, I do not watch obviously all videos, but I am trying to stay up to date on what is happening in the YouTube tech sphere, because technically I am part of it myself at this point. Again, we were at 2.5k subscribers yesterday when I streamed. About like, what is it, 14 hours later, 15 hours later, we are at 2.7k. So again, just the biggest, most heartfelt thank you that I can give to everybody in this community. I know I am streaming at a very, very weird time for my channel, trying something different based on my YouTube Studio analytics, and primarily because that's when I have time today. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started with JerryRigEverything. I think probably that's because his video is definitely more negative. I haven't watched it in full yet, so this will be an experience for all of us. And as always, if you're in the chat, you can let me know what you think, what you would like to see next, and of course, please all do the usual YouTube jazz, as I like to call it. The liking, the sharing, the subscribing, you know, all that fun stuff.
Apple is using titanium on their newest iPhone 15 Pro Max. Titanium is the coolest metal on the planet for many reasons. It's biocompatible, used for creating artificial joints, repairing.
Yeah, basically the body has a far, far lower tendency to reject titanium inside it than it does basically any other metal. I think platinum comes close, but obviously that would make like hip replacement surgeries far more expensive. Also, titanium has like durability advantages over most metals, while also being still relatively lightweight. It's somewhat difficult to work with from what I understand. Again, I'm by no means an engineer, it's just stuff that I know directly from the medical field where I'm in. So it's a very, very good material, not without its drawbacks. It can be rather hard and rigid in comparison to something like aluminum or even, let's say, gold, which is like known to be a very soft metal. So this is why we usually don't like to use pure titanium. Usually you will get some kind of alloy with a little bit aluminum in it inside, magnesium, something like that, to make it a little bit more easier to work with, and like less brittle, basically. Not that it's like easily to like break or something by human hand once you have like a massive piece of titanium, but if you're working with a thinner piece or something like that, or if you're working also with like extremely hard hydraulic pressure, obviously then you need to work with not pure titanium for the most part.
Human bones. Not to mention build interstellar spacecraft and to construct robots that crawl other planets. And of course it's on my ring. My ring has titanium that I reclaimed from a wheelchair. Titanium comes in quite a few different flavors, grade 1 being the cheapest, softest, and easiest to machine, which is what I thought the iPhone was going to be.
By the way, guys, cheers. I cannot open those new Coke bottles. Okay, I can. Like, they're extremely flush. Don't think that I'm like incapable, but it's extremely difficult to work with them. And then they're difficult to work with metal, famously aluminum.
But then Apple slapped a grade 5 on the screen and I got rocked, in more ways than one. And
Rocked, like rock hard? Okay.
let me show you why. I happen to have some 1-inch titanium bar stock laying around, as people often do. This guy cost $170.
Yeah, I think he will give the comparison to what aluminum costs, which is usually what I also would like to do whenever I talk about actual material costs when it comes to iPhone construction or titanium construction. In this case, I also like to mention that titanium is more difficult to work with, so most processes will be more expensive than working with aluminum. Also, sourcing the actual material, while it probably won't be difficult for Apple by any means, you have to understand what a logistical shift it is. Steel is extremely easy to source. You just have to find basically the right kind of stainless steel for your product, and then you get however much you want. Aluminum, again, Apple has had years and years of working with aluminum, so they actually have pretty innovative mid-process recycling steps so that as much material can be used as possible without having to smelt down everything and then having to work with giant bars of aluminum again, basically. However, when it comes to titanium, Apple has used titanium in the past, like on the titanium MacBooks. Were they still PowerBooks? I actually think they were still titanium MacBooks. So to make not just any product out of titanium now, which granted we had titanium Apple Watches, but and I do have a titanium Apple Watch. But to switch that for the iPhone 15 Pro series, which will make up more than half of the iPhone 15 series sold, right? 35-40% is supposed to be just the Pro Max. That is a really brave step. And to go, as he says, with grade 5 titanium, which again, Apple really likes mentioning grades of metals whenever they're using something actually nice. It doesn't usually mean that something is that much more expensive, but in this case, actually, it is pretty expensive. When Apple mentioned they were using aero grade style aluminum alloys for the iPhone 6s following the bend gate of the iPhone 6. The interesting thing about that was it's technically not that much more expensive or anything. It's just a little different. But in this case specifically, yeah, big shout out to also JerryRigEverything acknowledging whenever Apple does something right. I'm not the biggest fan of his channel, not because he's doing anything wrong. It's just his content is not for me personally. Also, say hello to my little Bella, and she's already fighting. And also don't want her to be tangled up in my earpods.
For example, this 6061 aluminum bar of the exact same proportions only cost me 10. Aluminum is what smartphones are normally made from, and the color difference.
And stainless steel in the case of the iPhone 15 Pro. And we've had some ceramic on the back, and obviously you do have glass. For the vast majority of phones are now glass sandwiches, but I understand what he means. Most phones have an aluminum chassis. Bella, I don't have anything for you. Go eat your regular food. I'll buy snacks later on.
Between the two metals is
or
glorious
she just
to
wants
behold,
to be cuddled.
especially as it's heated. The main reason my JerryRig knife is only $15 is because I'm using an aluminum alloy and not a titanium alloy. And
for the actual blade, or for for the holding mechanism. Because wait, you would like an aluminum blade would not be that good long term, would it? Like maybe just the cutting part is stainless steel then. That's interesting. Maybe I should look into his knives and stuff like that.
Keep in mind, this solid rod is only grade 2 titanium. I'm too poor to buy a full rod of grade 5 titanium, since a single notepad-sized paper-thick sliver already costs $106 all by itself.
Oh, okay, so he didn't compare it to grade 5. Of course, I don't know the concrete prices of like solid metal, like sheets or like bars in his case. So yeah, it seems pretty expensive. This is why I've said in the build-up to the iPhone 15 launch, why I've repeatedly said that Apple will not just be using titanium, which is volumetrically like lighter than the iPhone, like less than stainless steel, less dense, but Apple can also get away with using less of it because it is more durable, and Apple does not technically need to increase durability that much. Obviously, we will see some differences in durability results in what we are doing right now. Guys, she's like licking my arm. It's like I cannot get her to go away. She apparently missed me.
If we do some simple math and scale this 0.5 millimeter thick piece of metal up to a hypothetical 8.5 millimeter block, thick enough to mill a phone out of, we would be looking at almost $2,000 worth of grade 5
Yeah, sure, but you don't need the entire block for one phone.
titanium. And that's not even including the complexity of milling and shaping grade 5 and the dollar.
Good, so far really, really good. Acknowledging the complexities and expenses that Apple has to work with. Usually not something a lot of reviewers like to do, even with stainless steel. It was always true that stainless steel was more expensive and more difficult to work with than aluminum, far less so than titanium. But for example, if you always wanted to compare an iPhone Pro Max versus a Galaxy S Ultra, then you would have to account for that difference in how the prices are calculated by the company. Obviously, Samsung did have different stuff like periscope cameras and like reverse wireless charging, but the iPhone technically has hardware for reverse wireless charging. It just doesn't enable it for the most part. It only uses it for the MagSafe battery pack, which again, I really hope that Apple brings out a MagSafe battery with reverse wireless charging and regular wireless charging and USB-C with slightly higher capacity, and most importantly a fan. Like that to me would be such an easy $100 purchase day one, like something that cools down your device as you're charging it, something that can regulate its own temperature while it itself gets charged. And you have to imagine, like if you charge your iPhone right through USB-C and you charge it, like, yeah, sure, it's not fast by most standards, but you charge it by like 27 watts, and some of that energy is like given to the power bank through reverse wireless charging. And you also have the power bank not just sitting directly on the coil, but also covering up a good portion of the back glass that will impact its basically the thermal performance of the device. So this is why a fan would be so beneficial for battery longevity and for other use cases such as gaming, where obviously more battery is more welcome, but also more sustained performance through the use of active cooling is also welcome. So, and Apple could actually make that battery like pretty, I would even accept like $120 if they gave it like a solid like cooling layer, basically like something like a vapor chamber inside. But granted, they did not do that on the iPhone, so I doubt they will do that on an external battery accessory for less than $150
worth of iPhone hardware that goes inside. So the math just ain't mathin', and there's no way Apple suddenly decided to make negative profit on each iPhone.
I mean, whoever, like what he holds in his hand is like more than enough to probably to build the iPhone like chassis. My god, YouTube is such a messy app. It's like as I say that, I always have like my stream open up on my iPad so that I can see like chat, and I can see if I have a big delay or quality issues, right? And then you type in, then you accidentally click on like that search, the dictation button, which, by the way, why would you need that? You have like dictation on every device nowadays. You like cannot click it off fast enough. You have to give it like 2 seconds or something. Ridiculous.
You might have noticed that titanium reacts in a very unique way as it gets torched, oxidizing.
Oh, it gets so beautifully blue, which is actually interesting because this does, I mean, it's way brighter obviously and shinier than the titanium blue that Apple advertises, but that is actually true titanium blue. This is one way where Apple could like give us which I guess all phones would then look kind of unique if you tried it, right? But it would be an incredible imprecise process, also probably like expensive as hell to like fire up each individual chassis and then make sure that it all looks good. So you probably would have to like melt down half of them because they didn't look good. So yeah, I don't think that this is something that Apple will go for. Apple will probably try to solve anodization, so they don't have to go with like basically coated titanium.
And extremely predictable and consistent rainbows, going from yellow to purple to blue to light blue and back to gray again as it gets really hot. You might be thinking to yourself, hey Jerry, are you even gonna unbox the iPhone? And I say yes.
His videos are a tad slow for me. I usually, whenever I watch him, I speed it up. I'm sorry, I'm doing this through OBS Media Source, where that I think does not work, or I just have been too stupid to find it yet. Maybe I should just Google it for that matter. Also, we had like 15 people join while I was talking. That's incredible. I assume a lot of it is like just people joining through, of course, still the YouTube algorithm recommending some of my videos. But yeah, incredible. If you're one of those people who joined, let me know in the chat.
Let's jump in and see what this iPhone is made from, and also how well it can handle the heat of everyday life. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's get started.
Same please.
Inside the brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max box, we find the phone itself. This blue titanium is almost the same shade as the blued titanium.
Which I know people like to talk about like the natural look or like the blue one or something like that. It's ironic to me though that they always show like the glass first. That's not the titanium part of the titanium in the name of the color. Like, yeah, the glass is designed to look pretty similar, but because it's glass, it will never look exactly the same. So why don't you show the actual titanium first? I guess he has an excuse because he's still unboxing, but there's so many videos where I see people like, look at this natural titanium look, and they show like the gray back glass, and like, that's not the titanium, dude. It's actually the part I like the least. I would have loved a completely natural titanium chassis with a completely white back. As far as I understand, like the white version, the silver version, is like still like coated, right? It's just like much brighter than the blue and the black, so it does not collect like fingerprints quite as much, but it will still like scratch in a similar capacity.
Looking under the phone, this time we find there's no lightning cable. Instead, we have a brand new braided USB-C cable. I imagine the world will soon follow Apple's lead on this one, and we'll start seeing this port everywhere. Probably the closest thing we'll ever see to world peace. And honestly, the phone does feel good, about the same as any other rectangular phone, but the brushed titanium and the etched back glass do feel super cool.
Yeah, the brushed titanium is different than what we had before, so I definitely wouldn't agree that it probably feels the same as every other phone when it comes to that. But yeah, I can, like, I don't know if that's basically his standpoint, but I could agree a little on the fact that maybe phones have become too samey. However, I don't think it's up to Apple to change that, because they are leading the market in actual sales of actually expensive products that actually make a profit. So they are not incentivized to change whatsoever. Neither is Samsung, to be honest. And then the other players really, like, you have to think of something that isn't just a foldable if you really want to differentiate yourself. Preferably, I would want just devices that really fight on value, similar to how all laptops are basically identical, but then like do some different value stuff, better screens, better processors, stuff like that. So yeah, Apple will not be changing that, and I'm actually very happy that while they have still embraced that more like edgy design, that they've now brushed it off a little to make it more comfortable, change the materials to make it lighter, change weight distribution to make it more easier to hold in the hand. And then next year they're probably gonna increase weight a little again as they go with things like stacked batteries, as they make the device a little longer to account for slightly larger screens, and as both the Pro and the Pro Max get the 5x zoom camera. And also, of course, a larger main sensor and probably a 48 megapixel ultra wide. So there's a lot happening next year, which kind of would make me wonder if Apple would make a 48 megapixel 5x camera, because that would give like really good zoom, especially if it's also a much larger sensor that lets in more light.
Cool. But the imitation blue shade is just ever so much off from the actual shade of blue titanium that I think it would bother me long term. Apple said again that this screen glass is the strongest glass ever on a smartphone. They call it ceramic shield, and I agree. It is a pretty solid slab of glass. We normally see plastic screens scratch at a level 2 or 3.
As far as I understand, it's a highly customized version of Gorilla Glass, right? Which means that Corning still produces it, but it is fundamentally an Apple-developed technology, probably based on something that Corning themselves said. And it's actually interesting how Apple does not advertise like random upgrades to ceramic shield, similar to how Corning will like say, oh, this is Gorilla Glass Victus or whatever else, and it's like, or it's Victus 2 or whatever. And then in actual testing, there's like no fundamental difference. Like, I know maybe in the lab there actually is some, but it's not really perceivable on an end product. Yeah, and Apple is actually pretty honest. They've designed ceramic shield a while back, and they're still advertising it. And there's a reason why they advertise different basically different glass on the front and back. Ceramic shield is very much designed to be less scratch resistant, because it is at the front. This is where scratches will actually impact your usability, while on the back it's far better if the glass is more brittle rather than scratch resistant. It's far better that it's less brittle rather than more scratch resistance. Now I got it right. Because obviously if you drop it and then it cracks, well, that's bad, right? Well, if it scratches on the back, that's pretty much no problem whatsoever.
Glass at 5 or 6, and sapphire would be an 8 or 9. This dual ion exchange ceramic shield does still scratch at level 6.
I mean, does it? Kind of. Like, it looks like level 7 to me. Maybe it's the
moves at a level 7, but level 6 does appear to be quite a bit more faint than usual. And
yeah, exactly. This is what I was going to say. I basically don't see it at all. Like, sometimes when you scratch something like this could actually like be brushed off almost, right? 7 definitely, by all accounts. It probably would scratch at like 6.5 really like visibly, but at 6 it actually is, wow, it's actually a really good performer. Is that better than previous years? Guys, if you're in the chat, somebody who watches like JerryRigEverything, please let me know. Like, is it usually that good at level 6? Because look, I know that at level 8 there is no chance for anything that is actually glass to not scratch, but level 7 highly depends on the exact like mix, chemical mix here. It obviously will be like it still has to be like somewhat shatter resistant, so you will like not optimize it perfectly for scratch resistance regardless. But I don't think I remember it working that well at level 6. I think that's actually really, really good.
I do think Apple is onto something with this proprietary glass. The front selfie camera is tucked into the dynamic.
So far, really good. JerryRigEverything is positive in a highly neutral way. Obviously, he is informed about what is being used. Sometimes I expect when I watch videos like that to call out some stuff, because I do read probably more than most YouTubers based on the fact that like I'm a little bit of a nerd and those people have basically full-time jobs, which I still don't have. So it's not like I'm showing off here. It's just the nature of what stage of life I am in and what stage of life they are in. Also, they have to usually test a lot of different products, while I'm mostly Apple focused, somewhat by choice, but also just by sheer circumstance, where everyone around me also chooses iPhone, so I don't even get to help as much and experiment as much with Android as I used to in my prior years.
Island and is protected by that same slab of glass. The earpiece is a razor-thin slit between the glass and the frame.
Like, I know what he is doing. I have sometimes questions like, what is the point of sticking a knife into the actual, like, speaker grill? Like, yeah, we know it's like a fabric that covers it that is supposed to, like, vibrate and stuff. It's not going to be rock hard. Like, what is the point of this? This is where I don't like watching his tests, because they get a little out of hand, in my opinion. Guys, we added another 40 subs. I think this is just the algorithm catching up with all the data from yesterday. It usually will do that around like 2 p.m. So that means we've added now about 250 people since the last stream. That's incredible.
No speaker grills to fall out or get dirty. Making our way over to the titanium sides, Apple's using something called a PVD coating. A physical vapor deposition. It's a pretty wild method of applying an
Yeah, that's what it stands for. Like, sometimes when it comes to acronyms, English is my third language, so apologize if I, like, oh, yeah, I know PVD coating is like, obviously like a color that is applied through a process that works through like vapor almost. And it's like, oh yeah, that's why.
Protective layer over the titanium. I don't know enough about PVD to talk about it in depth, but you know...
Neither do I. This is why I always try to just dumb it down to it's coated. It's basically like painted in a way. I know for the most part that it's like it has like... It obviously won't wash off, right? That's pretty apparent. But also the other point is that it's still a thin layer, regardless of how well you do it, which means that scratches will produce the exact result that you see here on screen, which is underneath you can see the natural like light titanium look that obviously titanium has. Do I want it to change to anodized maybe next year? Yeah, it will probably depend on just how logistically like possible that actually is and what the pricing of the process will be. Though I kind of knowing Apple, I know they really don't shy away from doing something expensive if they know it will pay off in the long term. Also, what they could do is they could use like maybe they could make one anodized color, then one natural, and maybe two that are PVD coated. Similar to how the jet black iPhone 7 Plus was only available in like higher storage configs, right? It's not as much a difference in what you get, it's a difference in how you can get it. And Apple could maybe make a anodized black, like completely matte black version of the new iPhones that maybe is only available at 512 gigabytes or more, right? It would be kind of cool in my opinion.
It is scratchable. Exactly like the anodized aluminum. Everything except for this
Yeah, but anodized aluminum will not start looking that much different underneath. The reason why aluminum will look like somewhat shinier as you scratch it, well, it has a little bit to do with like just the light being reflected from a scratch a little differently. But the other part is that like aluminum that we know in the world is like oxidized, right, for the most part. So the aluminum that we scratch up underneath is not. So that's why it has a different look. Again, not an expert here. Physics class has been like now 8 years in the past, so please let me know.
5G antenna slot. For some reason this oval is just not scratching. I think they should make a whole phone out of whatever this stuff is.
Isn't it plastic? I don't know. Don't have a US based phone. Isn't it just plastic, so it's like really good radio frequency transparent?
The power button is scratchable, however, and not removable, along with the top. And
guys, we've added another 40 subscribers. We were at 2790. Now we are at 2830. So yeah, that's kind of incredible, and that kind of leads to my theory that this is just the algorithm still processing data that was obviously happening yesterday. And I'm incredibly happy about that support. We also have now more people watching. As always, you're welcome to join in the chat. Let me know what you think of the video. Let me know what you think of the topic in general. I hope you can see that I'm not trying to like drama like clickbait anybody here. I will be honest when it comes to my titles being a little sensational, but that's everything on YouTube. You are obviously not forced to keep watching my content if it doesn't reflect the sensational nature that you would want from a topic like this.
It took Apple 14 hours to apply this finish, and my JerryRig knife 14 seconds to unapply the finish.
Yep, probably like 14 microseconds when it comes to a specific scratch.
USB 3 with 10 gigabit transfer speeds. The regular iPhone 15
like
USB 2.
Like, come on, you don't need to scratch at all. This is just like scratch porn at that point. Like, come on.
And if you don't know what that means, you'll be just fine with either. The matte back.
Oh, really good call out. I did not expect that. I know that JerryRigEverything is like a big right to repair guy, a big open standards guy. I mean, technically open standards are still maintained if you're using USB 2, but I'm kind of imagined him being a bigger advocate for it. But he's correct. If you're somebody even like me, like for my use cases, USB 2 has been perfectly fine, even as I now do with projecting like the camera image from my main camera of my iPhone 13 Pro Max onto my Mac for OBS streaming. So yeah, that's a good analysis. If you probably don't know the difference between USB 2 and USB 3, for a phone, it likely won't matter. And it's not like you are getting like external hard drives at this point that only do USB 2 or some bullshit like that. If you're getting an actual device that requires faster data throughputs, it's of course that device will support those necessary throughputs to support whatever SSD it has inside. Even cameras have like decent USB based output, so you don't always have to like stick out the SD card and transfer it to your computer. You can just do USB to USB data transfer, which kind of makes me question why we don't have more cameras with like a lot of internal storage. I know it's like a priced thing, but if you could use like NVMe 4.0 storage, like they don't even mean like super standardized. I don't mean like the 2280 drives, but like if you could use like fast PCIe storage, that would be faster than any SD card or any CF Express card for that matter. So you could do some really good data capturing and then just transfer it to your computer, and then you maybe have one CF Express slot for if you need some extra data. I actually don't think that would be a bad idea for professional cameras, and it probably exists in like the super professional space.
Glass, which every phone should have, does not scratch. The Apple logo in the center is the...
I actually like did something similar. I went out to the restaurant with my mom, and she was like, "Oh, show me the watch." And I take out a knife and I put it over the sapphire screen, and her eyes are like, "Have you gone insane?" I'm like, "It's completely fine. It's literally like, sure, it's industrial sapphire, but it's still sapphire, and even regular glass does not scratch from like the somewhat soft like stainless steel knives that you usually get. So unless you go to like a steak restaurant or something like that, I guess. So yeah, that was funny to do.
The only thing that's smooth. One thing that Apple did change up quite a bit this year is with the cameras. We still get that gradual gradient built into the tinted glass that rises up to the camera plateau, and some of these camera upgrades we won't be able to see until the teardown. But Apple says these 3 lenses...
I still don't like what I see here. This is like a design decision on Apple's part that I don't fully understand. So you have like the protruding glass, which is fine. Then you have the protruding, like in this case, the titanium like rings around the actual cameras. But then you still have somewhat protruding glass. This is probably functionally good. Like, again, I have not... Well, I do have a small dead pixel area on my 13 Pro Max telephoto camera. However, that is the result of me just dropping the phone. Like, I don't assume that anything about this construction is to blame here. But it's so impossible to clean. Like, anybody who has an iPhone... Like, let's just even say 12 Pro Max or newer, you know how disgusting this gets, and you always have some dirt like between the glass part, the cover glass of the actual camera, and then the like metal ring around it. You can never clean that fully, regardless of what you do. And like that ring also, because it's somewhat shiny, it collects scratches in a very visible way, which looks like dirt. Then you try to clean it, you see that it's dirt, you get annoyed, and then there's always some dirt in between the rings, a little bit like where it meets like the outer glass. So there's so much. I just wish it was completely flush at that point. I just wish the glass would protrude to exactly where the rings end. And yeah, like I wouldn't mind a phone that is like 9 millimeters thick. So basically like it gets way closer to the actual like protrusion. I don't want something that is 11 or 12 millimeters thick, so we don't have like a camera bump. But I do think that we have gotten probably a little too thin in comparison to the camera bump, which granted, this iPhone actually kind of fights that because it is thicker than the previous generation.
That we can see are actually 7. Gotta LOL a bit at that absolute stretch. Here at the bottom we have a...
I mean, this is why JerryRigEverything is not a tech reviewer. We have reacted to Petapixel's video, the guys who actually do photography stuff, who actually said that, and as I also say, Mr. Who's the Boss had probably the best example of it as like an individual photo, where he showed you how like the algorithms that Apple employs for the 1.2 and 1.5x zoom produce a sharper image. So that's actually interesting. Anurag, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Titanium gives a more rigid body, don't you think? Yes. Titanium grade 5 will give it a pretty rigid body. This is why JerryRigEverything is actually correct when he says he was surprised that Apple was using titanium grade 5. Because as far as I understand, it is like the kind, obviously all of it is an alloy. You usually don't use natural titanium completely raw, completely like without other metals inside. But with the other grades, you have usually like more softer metals integrated into it, and more structural rigidity can actually be bad, given how if something cannot bend, it obviously will absorb like an entire impact, right? Because if it bends, then it gets like the impact, it disperses it, and some of it is like basically like spent on the energy to actually bend it. But if it's impacted and it's super rigid, in this case like titanium, what happens is that because it won't bend, because it's so rigid, now that force has to find another way where it can get spent, basically. In the case of the iPhone, that would usually be the glass. And we'll see those results, and they make perfect sense to me. This is why I've actually been surprised that Apple was using grade 5 titanium. But again, I also will like fight some general like fear mongering, not by Jerry actually, but like by someone in the community who believe that the iPhone is now completely useless or something like that.
Megapixel
We have not gone back to the iPhone 4 days, is basically what I'm saying.
main camera, which apparently has a nanoscale coating on the lens to reduce glare.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it does.
The coating luckily does not scratch off or fracture. The coolest camera is definitely the middle one, a 12 megapixel 5x tetra prism telephoto lens that redirects and reflects light 4 times before hitting a 3D sensor shift OIS stabilizer. If there's one reason to take apart the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it's to see what in the world that looks like from the inside.
I hate
Then
that
up top
sound.
we have a 12 megapixel ultra wide. Apparently, these two cameras on the edge can work together like two eyeballs to generate spatial video.
I actually really like the way Apple had shown it, which with spatial video, which will probably come sometime later this year, as Apple has promised, where they really show like them like horizontally together, and then you capture it, right? I think just how Apple arranges their cameras, and I go back always to the point that Apple did not just change their tri-camera arrangement for just aesthetic reasons. I think the way like everything is like somewhat close to each other, but also like almost equidistance, is quite cool. There's a lot of thought being put into it, and then you obviously need to like perfectly understand how close are the cameras together, what exact sensors are they using, so you can compensate for maybe some movement and stuff like that while you're trying to capture something like a spatial video. I'm actually incredibly interested in what the output quality will be. I'm kind of inclined to say that the output quality for first gen spatial video will probably be similar to first gen cinematic video on the iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is to say that it's likely trash, but let's see what it actually turns out to be.
Which, I don't want to be the guy to beat a dead horse, but that was something Android did 12 years ago with the HTC Evo 3D. Probably before some of you kidlets with iPhones were...
Oh, Jesus Christ. It was trash. Yeah, I tried that actually. I don't think with this phone though. I tried out some 3D phones at IFA, die Internationale Funkausstellung in Berlin. We got like a ton of interesting gadgets over the years, and I usually try to visit. Maybe I'll try finding some old pictures of me going there. And 3D was always such a crapshoot whenever you got there. Like I would argue like the Galaxy Note was like the first device that actually ever impressed me there in terms of Android smartphones.
Born. Gotta honor your ancestors. Apple said during their event that the back glass panel is easily removable to facilitate repairability.
Guys, we added another 100 subscribers since the last one, so that's basically 200 subscribers since we started. We are now at 2930. We'll probably reach like 2500 if the algorithm is still not done catching up with the last few days of what was happening on the channel, with the last day of what was happening on the channel. So again, an incredibly big thank you, and this is part of why I try to put out content. I know not every content is for everyone, and I know that some of you will probably just subscribe to me because maybe you liked my Apple fine woven versus leather comparison, but yeah, I'm so insanely grateful for all the support that you have given me. It's insane.
Which is a huge commendable move. And then in the same sentence, Apple said that the internal structure of the iPhone 15 Pro Max is made from 100% recycled aluminum, which immediately tells us two things. One, it's nice to see that there's more than just the iPhone design that gets recycled every year. And two, the internal frame is not solid grade 5 titanium. only the exterior.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly correct. It's also better for the phone, as I've mentioned, for something like drop impact, but also there are other points, which is that titanium is far better for radio frequency transparency than titanium. It's far better for thermal conductivity, not quite as good as copper or let's say silver, but also way cheaper and way lighter than, especially it's way cheaper than silver, way lighter than copper, so that's why it's usually used for the most part. Copper is then like used for more premium solutions, or just like where you need a lot more, like basically every graphics card will have some kind of copper in its cooling for the most part. And it's also, like as I said before, aluminum is softer, so it will actually like maybe bend a little. It is actually interesting because on the inside it probably won't do that much for shatter impact, but it is what it is. I mean, I still am not super happy with how Apple treats cooling inside their phones. Why I have advocated for like an accessory that actually does some extra external cooling, but for the most part I am really happy with how Apple constructs their phones.
Quite a bit. The iPhone 15 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch OLED display with 2000 nits of outdoor brightness and 120 Hz refresh rate.
Just for context, those are the exact same specifications of the screen as on the 14 Pro Max. So if screen is something that's most paramount to you and you got the 14 Pro Max because you were really excited, maybe you got the 13 Pro Max for promotion, then you got the 14 Pro Max for maximum brightness, you don't need to upgrade this year if your biggest priority is the screen.
And lasts for about infinity seconds before having no reaction to my lighter. Nice work, Apple. We'll try out my big boy lighter in a second.
Oh, really? Apple, like, ceramic shield survives the lighter way better than any other phone? I did not know that.
It's time to see if the new blended aluminum titanium grafted hybrid structure compromises the structural integrity of the iPhone 15 Pro Max. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, I did not see that one coming. You've been watching me durability test.
It's interesting because, like, the device isn't broken, right? Also, the back's glass is now much cheaper to replace. It's like 3 times cheaper to replace. So maybe Apple's business is to make it break 3 times more often. Massive Al in this specific test have no problem saying that. Also have no problem saying that this is not something that I'll be doing with my phone, so I don't really care. It's also like, I guess you could make the point, like, I'm a big dude, like, what happens if I have it in my back pocket and then I sit down on it? Maybe. I always keep my phones in cases unless I really know that I'm just at home with them or something like that. Is this a surprising result? Yeah, it is. It definitely feels like this is basically the opposite of what I described. It's not the opposite, it's just going from the other direction, which is, as I said before, that because titanium doesn't bend as much as aluminum would, or even stainless steel for that matter, the shatter would like go directly to the physical force would be transferred to the glass. In this case, the physical force was directly applied to the glass, but it wasn't able to escape onto like a bendable chassis around it in the case of stainless steel or aluminum. What it instead tried to do, it tried to escape into a super rigid titanium chassis, which did not absorb the force that way, which results in it still being stuck in the glass, and that results in the glass shattering.
Smartphones for about 11 years now, and most phones do not break. iPhones especially do not break.
I mean, the phone did not break. The back glass broke, which, yeah, it's a shame, but the device itself is still functional. Not excusing, obviously, the behavior here, but no, the phone did not break.
And that snap was abnormally quick. Kinda stunned. I'm not sure if it's because the grade 5 titanium frame has nearly 3 times more tensile strength than aluminum.
Yep,
Or
it is. Like, the difference in physics is just so profound here that there's no real reason to look for any other culprit, because also, like, it's not like the device had like any kind of individual weak element, right? When you try to bend like an aluminum iPad, you either blame the thin aluminum construction, or what you do, you blame some of the, like, maybe around an antenna or around the camera where structural rigidity is the softest, because Apple did not put enough like guardrails into that. And that absolutely makes sense. In this case, it looked like general breakage, pretty much exactly where his fingers were. The titanium itself did not bend in the slightest, which actually is, you want devices to bend a little. This is what people usually don't understand. Like, for example, what Elon Musk does not seem to fully understand when he uses like cold pressed stainless steel on the Cyberpunk model. Like, he did not fully account for how it differently behaves to heat than what you would usually do in a regular car. In fact, in what he has done with all of his other cars. So I will be actually incredibly interested to see how like the Cybertruck performs in the real world in terms of like gap measurements and small imperfections, stuff like that. I also think that cold pressed stainless steel just looks really, really garbage in general. I would never put it out without a proper coating or anodization process, but that's a very different discussion altogether. Also, we have 5 people watching. As always, I like to recommend you people joining in the chat, or if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and like. And if you want to support me directly, super chats are now open. Obviously no pressure, but yeah, that's one thing. Josephat, you've already recommended I do the A17 performance breakdown by GeekerVan. As I've said before, I am waiting for another 2 days or something before there are tests where the A17 Pro is on devices that definitely have like no background processes running, anything like that. And I would prefer for it to be English speaking, because subtitles are kind of a mess to react to often. But yeah, I do know the video, I do know the conclusions, and I will be talking about it probably this evening or sometime later this week. Maybe I'll wait until my own iPhone arrives if they really tell me it arrives on Wednesday. But overall, yes, I do know what you're talking about, and I am interested in that as well.
But the glass did not like being pressed or flexed by my thumb. That's crazy. On the first bend, too. Internally, the phone itself is doing fine, of course. There's no cracking or shattering of the frame. But the back glass is definitely obliterated. Good thing Apple made the glass modular, so it only cost $200 to replace instead of $500.
I believe it's $150 and $180, isn't it? Like, depending on which one. Or is it $150 and $200 between the Pro and the Pro Max?
But still, if I was a person who just purchased a $1,200 titanium iPhone 15 Pro Max, I would be extremely nervous right now.
I wouldn't be, and I won't be. This is where Jerry goes wrong, in my opinion. Whenever he makes statements like this, well, I would be really worried if I totally did the super realistic thing of like putting my iPhone in both my hands and then like pressing like this. That would make me so worried. Josephat, thank you so much for the $1.50 super chat. I believe it's a super sticker, right? Not a super chat. I'll just briefly try to send you a heart. And we have another 10 people joining the channel while I was talking, and another 10 people before that since my last update. So thank you so much. Can I just send like a heart like I used to, because now it's like replaced by the super chat button? That's like very weird. But Josephat, please know that I have seen it and that I really, really am grateful for you doing this. Really, really thank you. Now I'm glad I actually mentioned it. Usually I'm like a little afraid of mention like direct support stuff. But yeah, thank you, Josephat, very, very much.
Anyway, I did not plan on that happening, but you gotta admit, the crack looks pretty cool. The Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max does not survive my durability test, which means it's time for the big boy lighter. The PVD coating is already an imitation blue, which would make any actual bluing of the titanium frame very difficult to see. But if we sand it down and expose some bare titanium,
that brings me back to the iPhone 4 days. It's like, if you scratch your phone, sand it down. Like, add more scratches so it looks better.
If Apple's grade 5 reacts the same way as my grade 5. That's some pretty good looking brushed titanium.
Yeah, it looks good, and as I've said before, really good that we have tests like that. I actually think his like bend test probably is the best thing he does, except for his scratch tests, because the scratch tests are repeatable. They're pretty scientific almost in that regard. The bend test will depend on the pressure, will depend on how you treat the device prior to that as well. Everything else he does, like the fire test and stuff like that, that is more for show.
It's Apple 14 hours. I'm using a MAP gas torch, which, along with burning my desk, is actually lighting some of the titanium dust on fire. You can see the sparks glow white as they sputter away from the phone. Now, the titanium...
Yeah, total durability test. Guys, I'm putting a flamethrower through my iPhone. You know, the things we do every day to our phones.
Itself could probably handle the heat, but the screen and the phone circuitry, not so much. The torch definitely accomplished...
I mean, yeah, probably depends on where exactly you put it. I mean, the battery is covering a lot of the device. I just, in general, for safety reasons, given lithium-ion chemistry, I would probably not use a phone that has been ever put to this kind of treatment. Even with the back glass, I would probably, like, given that it's now easier to repair, I would look inside and see if there's some kind of bend to the battery, because if the battery is bent, you know, lithium ion does not like that. So I would also get for a go for a battery replacement in that case. But obviously, don't do this to your phone and you'll be fine.
My lighter could not. And if we look super close at the iPhone frame, we can see it start to change colors from the heat. Apple is indeed using real titanium. Is it grade 5 though? I do have ways of finding out.
Really?
I think it's getting kind of hot in here. Now, everyone knows the whole point of getting a new iPhone is so that everyone knows you have a new iPhone.
Nope, never has been the case for me. Maybe all the way back to when I had my iPhone 3GS and then later the 4S. Never later on cared about it. Usually, like, I bought new devices because most people in my family still were like on either old phones, like feature phones, not smartphones, and people really wanted to get smartphones. So I, as a tech enthusiast, bought myself, obviously with my mom's money, a new smartphone, and then like it was handed down in my family because nobody cared about the difference between a 6S or a 6S, between an iPhone 6 or a 6S or a 7. So I could go up from the 6 to the 6S to the 7, and then after that everybody started buying new phones for themselves. So then I waited until the 10S, then I waited until the 13 Pro Max, and now I've waited until the 15 Pro Max.
A black plastic case would wholly and entirely defeat the purpose. And wow, side note, natural titanium is the move for sure. However, getting a transparent case to show off your phone is dangerous.
I mean, it looks good, but I disagree. I like the blue a lot. It's what I have ordered. But yeah, after also working a little bit with like or like just using my natural titanium Apple Watch Ultra 2, yeah, I'd kind of agree that I like the natural titanium look more than I expected.
Since most clear cases are made of thermoplastic polyurethane, which when exposed to ultraviolet radiation undergoes the irreversible process of photooxidation. Sunlight makes clear cases turn yellow.
Oh my god, is that like the same D-brand ad now? Will that be where he advertises their new clear case that supposedly never yellows?
So on the off chance you ever do go outside, you won't have a clear case anymore. enter my channel sponsor dbrand.
Of course it is. Everybody on YouTube has the same fucking sponsors. Oh god. Like, I mean, it's not like dbrand by itself is bad by any means. It's just, it's funny.
dbrand has inexplicably found a way to defeat the sun with their never yellowing, completely transparent ghost case. And they're offering free replacements if it ever does yellow, which is pretty brave of them. The best part is the ghost case is also completely
I would argue that they know, by the way, that this claim that forever replacements are a little bullshit, for the simple reason that like after 5 years most people will have upgraded anyway, you know what I mean? So whatever case like you have for this specific model, even if it's not yellow at this point, it still becomes pretty much useless.
compatible with my teardown skin. You can keep your own phone from getting absolutely
so quite honest, actually, the environmental impact of cases is actually pretty big. I can understand why Apple tried to go with something like fine woven, so the carbon footprint is actually lower. I know that a fine woven is like not really durable, but I don't know. Will it probably last enough so that it can survive for as long as like one person holds the phone, owns the phone, and then that person resells the iPhone or gives it to somebody else, and that person gets a new case anyway? It's a difficult topic.
like mine with the link down in the description. Now, I pride myself on being extremely thorough, and I'd be amiss if we let this golden opportunity to check the back glass of the regular iPhone 15 Pro for similar structural deficiencies as
exactly
its counterpart.
And see, look at that. I know what happens.
Nothing happens. Flipping the phone over to the front, again, nothing happens. The normal-sized iPhone 15 Pro survives and does.
Yeah, you there is probably like a larger like lever. Sometimes my English in that regard is not perfect. I apologize. Like basically, like if something is longer, you can exert more force into the middle by bending it. And if something is shorter, it's a little more difficult to achieve that result. I kind of doubt that it will apply to most Pro Maxes either. I mean, there might have been some structural problems with this model, who knows, maybe he just got really lucky / unlucky, maybe even some of his scratching and something like the speaker port damaged something in the structural way, I don't know. It's just, I want to say, don't get frightened about getting the iPhone 15 Pro or the Pro Max. We'll watch a video right away that actually shows you that you shouldn't be worried about those phones.
Not have the same fate as the Max. I'm curious to see how thin Apple's titanium layer actually is, and what grade it is. The iPhone 15 Pro Max teardown is going to be quite a bit more destructive than usual.
Yeah, I'm not interested in that, and I likely won't be reacting to that. I've seen the video where he gets like super into it. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. We spent now an hour on his video. It was a good video for the most part. I like that he doesn't seem as vitriolic towards iPhones as he sometimes was. Maybe Apple's statements about better repairability and the fact that they actually use like a pretty expensive metal here have kind of mellowed him out a little. USB-C definitely also likely helped. So yeah, nothing against JerryRigEverything, not necessarily my favorite content on YouTube, but I don't have much against this specific video. I think those are worthwhile like results that he is delivering. C. Svervo, I used Android for about 12 years, and I just switched to an iPhone 15 Pro Max. Big mistake, it seems. No, dude, it's not. Like, for one, will you be wearing a case on it? That's one thing. Then you don't have to worry about anything ever. But the other point is, it will not break like this. I promise you that. Is your regular use case like doing dish with your phone? Like, believe me, it's not. And you like iOS and you're switching to an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is like objectively a fantastic phone in most regards, you'll be so freaking happy, believe me. No, don't worry about this based on this video. And with that being said, let us switch to the other one, which is big shout out to Philippe. I'm somehow pronouncing his name like French Philippe, but he is Philip. He's basically I think he's either Ukrainian or Russian. Doesn't really matter. I know, by the way, that these days saying somebody is Ukrainian or Russian can be a really big insult for either one, though Ukrainians are definitely are more in the right to feel offended by that, but it's just me not remembering, and it's not like there's a visual difference here. I was planning on going caseless with this phone because it's so good looking and feels so good in my hand. What could you be doing then is my question. Well, look at the drop test by an actual, like, somewhat expert on that regard, and then you'll decide. Also, we have more people watching us now. As always, I recommend doing what I call the YouTube jazz, liking, subscribing, sharing, and if you want to support me directly, this channel now supports super chats and super stickers. Thank you so very much in advance. Let's get into it.
What's up, guys? EverythingApplePro here. The iPhone 15 Pro Max is here. I had to do a video for this one. Titanium.
He looks a little bit on the thin side. I don't know, like, how his health has been. I know he's been, like, in a motorcycle accident, but that was like a while ago, wasn't it? Am I mixing him up with somebody? But, like, he used to be, like, super, like he was always, like, thin, but, like, muscly thin. Now he has, like, well-trained arms, but his upper body doesn't look the way he used to. Josephat, I'll go caseless, only make sure to get Apple Care just in case. Yeah, I mean, that's can be a financial, like, burden that most people don't want to put on themselves. But, yeah, if you can get it, yeah. Why not?
Here, USB-C, but most importantly for me, titanium. I can go on for hours about this material. It's one of the most amazing yet frustrating things in the world to work with. I'm really excited to see how Apple...
I kind of assume that Apple probably will switch the exact titanium they're working with maybe next year. Probably to make it a little cheaper, maybe to make it better for thermals and stuff like that in the long run. Maybe to make it like a little softer. But that is just speculation. Also, guys, say hello to Bella. Don't you want to give her a super chat? Give her a super chat.
Made of aluminum. Now, in this video, of course, we're going to test just how much more durable is titanium versus the stainless bands it's replacing. Man, I've just been dying to see these. We work with titanium a little bit too, and man, it's
yeah, he does like now case designs and stuff like that, and he actually got really into it. When he started, it looked kind of like a side business. You know how like Lou from Unboxed Therapy did like his own like Pitaka like cases, and they were basically like carbon copies. Carbon, but. Yeah, Philippe really seems to have gotten into that business of cases and stuff. Like, he gave up YouTube for it, and he had over 8 million subscribers. He was on the path to 9-10 million subs. And ironically, what is interesting, like, his channel still maintains most of those subs, right? I mean, he probably lost like a couple 10,000 subscribers, but at his size, I expected a far bigger drop given that his channel is basically inactive.
But frustrating. So I really want to know how they did it. Apparently they used 3D printing technologies to make the base more efficiently, and then they mill the chassis. I didn't even look at this in the Apple store because I wanted to see it.
Wow, that's a lot of iPhones. I've just... yeah, I guess that makes sense for a drop test. Well, he probably will make that money back, given that his video will get decent views.
Wait, those bands... The rings here, just fantastic. Wow. And the way that the curved edges feel in your hand, I think that might even influence this test. The fact that it's not as jagged. I love it. The color is just beautiful. Weight-wise, yeah, this thing seems considerably lighter. She just sneezed,
my Bella.
8% lighter versus the 14 Pro Max. That's also going to be a factor here. The color they got right, though, wow. And that's the titanium black. There's only so much you can do with a physical vapor deposition coating. Ooh, nice. So that's actually quite close to the, what do we got? The 12 Pro Max. Actually very similar. Just a different.
Yep, this is why I like it so much. Do I probably like Midnight Blue a little more in the 12 Pro Max? It's actually hard to tell because I haven't yet seen the 15 Pro Max in real world. Also, he wears an Apple Watch Ultra, so he is still an Apple guy through and through. And he wears the ring, which also looks like titanium almost. Does everybody wear titanium rings these days?
Right. Tint, but pretty close.
I was engaged, guys, but I never wore a wedding ring. Because the wedding didn't happen. Maybe that's a story for another time. But yeah, I bought gold rings for my fiance at that point. So yeah, it never occurred to me to do titanium, but maybe like for the man you would. Yeah. That's just my personal ring experience because I never wear rings.
Absolutely love the way that it just conforms to your hand. At some angles it almost looks the same, but just a brighter version. They both look fantastic, but natural takes the cake this year. So in customary fashion, let's go through a series of drops you might encounter in your day-to-day, starting from...
Oh wow, wait, is that piece of like, what is it? Is it asphalt basically? Like, is that new? I don't remember, like, he usually dropped it, like, on his regular floor, didn't he? Maybe he changed it in, like, his very later stages of testing. Maybe I haven't watched him long enough. But, like, yeah, that thing is, like, super easy to break something against.
Waist height, head height, and then we've got even taller if we need, if this titanium proves that durable. Because we epoxied the floors, I needed a surface top that we'd find pretty much anywhere.
Oh, okay, yeah, so I remember correctly. He usually does it against his regular floor. Or also, big shout out to the iPhone here that he uses to actually capture the video. So this is why I always try to tell people when people say like, oh, just get a professional camera for everything. There are limitations to what some professional cameras will do. If you buy a mainly stills focused camera, you will not be getting great like slow-mo out of it or great action mode like stabilization. And if you get like a videography camera, there's a good chance that your stills will not look as good even as you sometimes will get on the iPhone, like mainly the most recent iPhone, most expensive one. But at least if you don't know what you're doing, right? Of course, like a proper DSLR or a big mirrorless camera will like deliver great results, but like that instant like click and shoot experience will be just so much better on the iPhone. Low light will probably be better unless you really know how to handle your ISOs and stuff like that, your exposure length manually and stuff like that on the camera, and most people don't. While on night sight, it usually is like sliding the button. Do you want to exposure for 2 seconds? Do you want to exposure for 3 seconds or something like that? So yeah, there's definitely somewhat professional use for smartphones as video or photo taking devices.
Just a solid slab of concrete.
It's
and
concrete, it's
surrounding
concrete.
it is the very material that forms the 15 Pro's titanium. Bonus shot in case I miss. All right, let's start from the waist height with the 15 Pro Max, 8% lighter in 3, 2, 1. That even sounds different.
Yeah, it sounds like hollow somewhat, but obviously not because the phone is hollow, because the metal just gives it off a different sound.
The 15 Pro, 3, 2, 1. It has a metallic ding to it.
Yeah.
So the prognosis, wow, that comes off pretty easily. Just from one drop, I can tell you it's not.
Yeah, concrete is it's like it scratches, but it also gets scratched. So some of the dirt you might have after like a drop onto concrete might actually look like a scratch of the actual device, but it's actually the material that was scratched off from the concrete.
Resilient as stainless. I mean, it survived. Waist height on the side. Now let's go to the back side. These lenses protrude a little less now, but the 15 Pro Max has a tetraprism inside for a 5 times optical zoom, which may be more fragile. And that one. In 3, 2, 1. That's it, huh? Wow.
Wait, which one was that?
Quite short. First impact, either in the corner or the lens here. Apple didn't make any more claims that it was stronger than the 14 Pro Max, but they do claim it is the strongest glass in a smartphone.
Yeah, it seems really like who said that? Svervo, you've said you want to go caseless. Maybe you could get like just a back cover for the glass, right? So you don't need to cover up the entire device. They basically like glue onto your phone. I don't know how popular they are these days. I wish they could attach with a magnet similar to like, maybe there is something based on MagSafe. Let me just briefly look into it. Actually, that's interesting. MagSafe back cover iPhone. It just shows the cases. It does not have something that's just the back cover. It's always usually a case. But if you can find something like that, maybe that could be worthwhile for you, like personally. Yeah, so that would be one suggestion, if you can find something like this at all.
And glass, of course, breaks. This is not completely smooth. And the 15 Pro. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Oh, that's pretty repeatable.
Yep.
Also a corner shot. Yeah, that sucks. I expected a little bit better. This is the first time in any drop test video that both have cracked on impact.
Yeah, usually the small difference in how they're dropped. Well, like, yeah, I actually have to say, with this, get a case, most likely. Or get maybe some kind of really just cover for the back. But then usually, if it's just like MagSafe or almost like have like a little bit of glue for that, yeah, no, get a case. You know, get something like the clear case to make the phone still look pretty. Get like a leather case from Nomad, or what I can also highly recommend are Pitaka cases, which are made of aramide fibers, which are extremely light, extremely durable, feel very good in the hand, have very strong MagSafe magnets in the back. So yeah, I actually have to say, this is actually pretty repeatable, and I'm a data kind of guy. This looks bad, and or this looks not good at the very least. So yeah, I kind of now I'm actually questioning if like maybe Samsung will not switch to titanium on the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Not because titanium is worse, but because working with those different just parameters will also make it difficult for them to test it in a realistic way. And they've invested so much into aluminum. Like, I don't know if it makes sense for them to switch for just one model. For Apple, those two models, the 15 Pro and the Pro Max, those are huge sellers. To them, it can absolutely make sense. Though I kind of have to say, they should have probably gone with somewhat softer titanium here.
Backed on the first drops. Here we go, face down in 3, 2, 1. And 3, 2, 1.
Okay. Yeah, that was a wrong drop,
That one
wasn't
has
it?
survived. Bit of glass that just came out. Titanium, it's got some scoring on it. So when this scratches, it shows to a new degree. I wouldn't say it's rough, but the finish PVD does come off. 15 Pro Max also survives. Tiny micro crack here, a little bit of delamination. Still pretty impressive. Took that brunt, this corner impact, and survived. Face ID does work, and the Tetra Prism 5x zoom flawlessly. All right, let's continue to head height. Try and do this
Ooh,
as
now I'm
accurately as
afraid.
possible on the side. In 3, 2, 1. In 3, 2, 1. Ooh, that was my fault.
Yep.
The 15 Pro Max did survive. Gotta give it to them. You cannot help but agree.
I almost wonder, would it at this point maybe make more sense to use ceramic shield on the front and back? Like, I guess it has a lot to do with the protrusion of the camera glass here. Maybe they should switch to like a metal ring all around it, because it really feels like that, like protruding glass being still part of one piece of glass kind of hurts the durability of the product. overall in a way that might not be very like necessary. I know that it like the tri-camera design with the protruding glass is now pretty iconic when it comes to the iPhone. I just don't know if it's worth it now that titanium does this very different thing when falling, basically.
Based on these few drops, it is the strongest glass in a smartphone, given you drop it correctly. This probably might have survived had I not messed up.
We added another 10 subscribers. It looks like the algorithm is basically done with working through all the subscribers from yesterday. It seems like we've added a little over 400 people in the last 24 hours, which is absolutely bonkers. And I'm incredibly happy to say that. We'll probably be hitting 3,000 like either sometime today or early tomorrow when the algorithm starts processing data from today. I never expected this channel to grow this quickly. Incredibly humbled, incredibly grateful. So if you're in the chat and you're witnessing basically my reaction live, you know how much this means to me, I hope.
But what's a drop test without human error? Not that these were ever super scientific to begin.
Yeah, I by the way, he's such a good dude, right? Yeah, they were never really scientific. I mean, his channel is probably one of the ones that Apple really didn't like, right? Like drop tests, jailbreak stuff, and things like that. So, yeah, like I kind of can imagine why he might not have wanted to do like his channel the way he used to, and so he switched to something more productive like the case production. It just so happens that obviously at that point he probably got too busy. He had enough money. I mean, at that point he could have just reinvested the money and like lived from that money forever. So that's interesting. And obviously whenever he needs a little bit extra cash, a little bit more attention to his business or something like that, he can just make another video on what is still an plus 8 million subscriber channel. So he is doing well. He's eating well, basically.
Let's see if we can get one of these.
Even though he is pretty thin.
2, 1.
Ooh, yikes.
Nice spin. And in 3, 2, 1. Lenses have survived. Pretty dang impressed with the structure here. Also new on the 15s is the fact that you can open it from the backside like you could on the 14s, meaning this is no longer a $500 to $600 repair. It's $200. Officially from Apple for the rear, that is. 15 Pro Max is still chugging along. Pretty sure the next drop is gonna destroy the display. Let's see if the 5 times is still working. Looks like it is. Pretty dented in. Definitely
this is actually where the difference comes in whenever we talk about cases. Phones still can get damaged in cases. So the more durable your phone is without a case, the better it is with a case. And in this case, oh my god, that sounds like a pun at this point. But if you drop it, especially on the front, where some cases might not even do a lot of front protection because their sides that are not protruding too much, which means that the drop will hit the actual front screen and not like the more protruding sides. However, in this case, oh my god, how often will I use this? However, here, obviously, we are testing the ceramic shield directly, and it is like yielding really good results. So kudos to Apple and ceramic shield. Maybe next year could warrant some material changes. I would argue a slightly softer alloy of titanium could be good. I would argue that maybe some kind of like specifically designed version of ceramic shield for the back could go a long way, and maybe giving up on that one piece of glass design for the back around the cameras especially. But then again, everything can create new problems, right? Some people expected those new phones to behave far better in drops because they're a little lighter, they're slightly differently balanced in terms of weight. So people thought like, oh, titanium will fare far better. But as we see, that's not the case because of specific physical properties like tensile strength.
Much easier than stainless steel. At this point, all we have remaining is the 15 Pro Max glass. the lenses, which have miraculously somehow not cracked, and I want to see if we can get any sort of deformation out of the titanium chassis. I mean, what height is it going to take to get something like that? The 15 Pro display has stopped responding. 15 Pro Max head height face down in 3.
We have more people watching now, and we are coming pretty close to the end. So I do want to, as always, shout out your amazing support for the channel. And if you are somebody who watches and hasn't yet subscribed, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and thanks to proper monetization on this channel, you can now give super chats, super stickers, stuff like that.
2, 1. 2, 1.
Ooh,
Extra carnage.
Yeah, that's just carnage at that point.
Okay.
What?
So it really is luck of the draw. Sometimes you're lucky.
Man, ceramic shield
sometimes
is
you're not.
awesome.
Hit more of the titanium chassis. The curved surface might be doing some help here. Selfie camera is working. 5 times zoom is working, it appears.
Oh no, he's getting out the
15,
leather.
16 feet here.
No.
Will it dent? 2, 1.
Oh,
Wow,
Jesus.
that's how you can tell it's actually titanium. The spark.
Damn.
That was actually pretty cool, gotta
Yeah,
say.
that
You
was
won't get
awesome.
That from any other height. And somehow did
Oh my,
survive.
that
Wow.
front
iPhone 15
screen.
Pro Max, buy it now. It can survive your 15-foot daily drive.
Yeah, this is where I get back to, like, I don't, of course it sucks that there are like aesthetic problems, but like, see Svervo, you have like asked if like you shouldn't maybe not, you maybe shouldn't go caseless. Like, you see this? And what is more likely, that you'll be doing this to your phone, or that you might drop it occasionally?
And somehow, no deformation in the titanium. It has bent a little bit, actually.
Well, yeah, but
Just
that's
a little.
normal.
So
It's
the camera-
it is not that thick. It's not a solid bar of titanium or anything.
Right? 5 times zoom, working. Face ID working. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
little...
you could basically like switch out that back glass, and sure, the titanium would be scuffed, but you would have a perfectly fine working phone that still feels good in the hand. You will not get those results from most other phones out there.
misshapen. 15 Pro Max has survived. And how can you tell that it's real titanium? Like this. So here's an actual piece of titanium. It passes the test. You get these nice white sparks.
Yeah, does he use titanium in his like cases for his business? Because why else would he have like such big solid pieces of titanium lying around?
Burn after they're flicked off the material. Apple Watch Ultra. Oh, yeah. That's real, all right.
Yeah, that's real, all right.
Yep. And the titanium blue. Okay, maybe this one because it's messed up. Yep. That's real titanium. And our new Gen 5 case, which is going to have titanium lens, buttons, and logo. We're going to...
Oh, it looks good. Oh my god, I might get his case over a Pitaka case, which I usually get. This looks good. Does he have something in the... Well, I guess I wouldn't mind actually having like natural titanium buttons there, because that would look good with my Apple Watch. Actually looks good, man.
Making accessories for them. Absolutely real deal. All titanium here. Titanium police. Rest in...
Ooh. Can he really go inside? Is that like a testing thing and not like a real production thing? Because you don't want to contaminate it with anything, right? Like, you don't want any dirt that will then get like hard pressed into whatever you are doing. I mean, I know that everything has like processes of like cleaning in between, but usually you want to keep like those machines like basically sterile.
Tonight. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max is absolutely everything it was hyped up to be. The titanium is incredible. It even sparks. It's the real deal on the outside, that is. Man, this is so cool. Apple did really well here. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.
So
Thank you for joining
wait, you see on the next one he plans to do more content? Is he back?
me for my yearly upload.
Okay. So yeah, so he understands the joke himself here.
Yeah, can't wait to start using mine. Peace. And guys, I did want to say,
I'm perfectly happy with like running his self ad because I'm actually
I'm
interested.
sorry for just leaving things as they were.
His brand is Phone
We're
Rebel.
really trying to make Phone Rebel work, and Gen 5 is the product I've always wanted to make, and I could give it the time finally to do so. If you guys want to support my company and future videos coming
Oh, okay. So would that mean that he might have like a blue buttons and stuff like that as well for option?
to YouTube, phonerebel.com. You guys will not be disappointed with our new offering, Gen 5, and no matter what, we always make things right. So we should have Gen 5 coming in by end of month and shipping in the first week of October. Also to the random guy at the Apple Store today that said, we miss you. You know, you really got through to me. Thank you, man. I'll see you guys around more often. Peace.
Okay, more often. Well, it definitely seems like he might want to do a little more content. So, guys, we are basically finished right now. I might actually want to do like a stream later in the evening, depending on my time planning today. I'll be going to the gym right now. Really grateful. This worked out pretty well. We've had a decent amount of people joining, given the crazy time that I actually started this ad. We have seen like a ton of subscribers being added to my channel as we are talking. Still at 2960, so probably 3,000 hitting at this point tomorrow, likely higher than that if we keep like adding 300-400 people per day, which is insane. We've had like a day where we added 600 people overall. I don't expect that to happen very often. That probably was the result of like a lot of pent-up watching relating to the Apple event. We are obviously still pretty much in the heat of it. This week, as the front page tech guy, he said that this will be all basically people just regurgitating stuff they've already said last week. But I still think we'll have some fun content. Josephat, as I promised you, I will try to look into the GeekerVan A17 Pro video, whether it means reacting to it live or maybe using some of its information in some kind of breakdown. I kind of hope that I can do it with like an AnandTech article maybe. I think that would go like really well hand in hand. I think AnandTech just does like really good testing. They do like have a professional suite of software for it, and they usually have really good understanding of how performance actually scales, right? Because some people will like say, oh, something is not more efficient because it technically produces more and it technically needs more power, but in reality it like actually is like more efficient. It just produces way more performance for that extra bit of power. So that's something you can guys look forward to. As always, I will of course inform you on both the channel and on Twitter about it. You can let me know what you would like to see next. Exactly, Josephat, you're agreeing with me that this needs to be sorted out a little more. And I would also say that probably no testing is really relevant before like 17.1, because if they're actually like, it's not like I'm saying that everything right now is worthless, but imagine if Apple pushed it out, right, maybe coming in a little hot. Just look at, for example, the AMD 7000 series of graphics cards, right? They've like reduced like idle power consumption on those cards by like 3x or something like that, right? It didn't go to like your usual like 20 watts or something in idle, 10 watts even, and they fixed that in software. So if Apple has a similar bug that uses always a little bit more power, now that will not just result in slightly lower battery life, but in a smartphone that tends to overheat more easily because it doesn't have active cooling, it will actually produce enough like idle heat by default so that whenever you're putting a higher demanding task on top, suddenly where your phone would be using 4 watts or 5 watts or 6 watts, it uses 5 watts or 6 watts or 7 watts. You know, that one extra watt might not sound a lot, and it definitely is not when we're talking about big graphics cards, but we might be talking about the very difference about the phone like performing longer or shorter at its maximum performance, or about maximum performance. Usually they like they like tend to like limit themselves to like 90%, maybe not the full 100. And the reason why I really want to be careful, because I reacted to like Dave 2D's video about the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and there explicitly he said that the A17 Pro maintains peak performance a little better than the A16, right? And it's the performance results in like GeekEvent's video are actually pretty good. He just calls out some efficiency issues. But then we also have like ray tracing benchmarks out there that are clearly rushed, clearly don't test out a lot of actual intensive ray tracing, where they show that the iPhone performs like the A17 Pro performs like 60% better. That never happens with hardware accelerated ray tracing. If you really use a demanding hardware accelerated image, like not just where there might be one part of a reflection somewhere, you will get 3, 4x, sometimes 10x better results. Like you got that with the NVIDIA 20 series over the 10 series, where you might not have seen great and I do mean with artificial benchmarks. In actual games, the difference can be a little different, but usually it's still massive once we account for hardware acceleration, partially because like even like software support for like to bring back actual ray tracing to software is like incredibly demanding. And then AMD cards, the 6000 series was way better than the 5000 series if you really do something intensively ray traced. So yeah, I don't trust the current benchmarks. I don't think they've been perfectly optimized. I think the first wave of Apple, by the way, like I do want to just mention one thing here very briefly, which I think will be like interesting to you, Josephat, if you're still here, which is like Geekbench 6 Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Okay, yeah, so we do have here. Just briefly switch to macOS. You can see this is Geekbench 6. This is single core. It's 1879, right? In comparison, the iPhone is at over 2900. Like, that is such a big difference. Like, I don't even know why we have discussions about the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 potentially being better. Like, yeah, sure, in GPU task, it performs pretty similar to the A17 Pro. However, that also comes with it, well, some things have more bandwidth, some Android phones. I wish Apple had used LPDDR5X. It isn't just faster, it's also more efficient. I think that's a shortcoming from Apple this year. They will be solving it next year, though, and they did add more RAM, which is kind of un-Apple-like. Then multi-core performance, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 around 5,000. The iPhone is at over 7,000, 7,200. OpenCL, I don't know how comparable those are with, like, you see, like, Vulkan is not really very well tested, so let's take OpenCL. Let's just say it's 10,000. The iPhone here is at 27,000 with Metal. Yeah, so maybe like just go for iOS benchmarks now that we have taken a look at it. So yeah, 2800 on the A17 Pro, 3.8 gigahertz, multi-core, 7200, as I said, 7147 in this specific case. Metal here, the iPhone actually, like you see, Josephat, I am doing my research, so maybe I actually earned a super chat here because you see, I am actually informed here. So the actual compute benchmark is actually really high here. Like, sure, the A16 was no slouch, and the A16 versus the A15 was by no means a big upgrade, right? 20,000 versus 22,000. This was probably mostly comes from using higher bandwidth memory on the A16 versus the A15. But yeah, this is interesting in my opinion. Like, the iPhone really performs well here. Just this is like A17 outperforms M2 here. So don't think ever for a moment that this is like some kind of bad generation or anything. Like, Apple was already far ahead. This is why their leaps are smaller sometimes than they might look. But this is literally 1,000 more points more. And even if we go to like Mac benchmarks for comparison, we actually have M2 Max clocked at 3.7 gigahertz. You see that the A17 Pro has better single core performance than the current Mac Pro and Mac Studio. It's insane. If we actually look at multi-core, where will we find like 7,000? We'll have like somewhere around the results of a 9900K, right? That's insane that we have that on a smartphone. So if we actually look for like here, Xeons are not that fast when it comes to here. A 9980HK as a laptop part was like 6400. So we have come a long way in terms of multi-core as well. And if we look at Metal, 2700 is still below an M1, but we now get that with like less than half the power consumption. So there's a lot that we can talk about, and just really wanted, because you gave me the super chat, I just really wanted to show you that I am doing my research on this topic. Obviously not just using Geekbench, though I do have my problems with some other benchmarks currently. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff that we all can be discussing together. This stream is now closing in 2 hours. I don't want to make it that long, so I will be wrapping up. Once again, Josepha, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for everybody else who joined in the chat to talk with me. Thank you everyone who just watched this video. Everyone who subscribed to the channel is like helping it grow in general. I will call out some other small stuff that you can be doing for me if you really want to. You can follow me on Twitter to engage with me directly on there. And you can support me directly through Patreon. I've added the long-promised cheaper subscription tier, which is MarkTech Pro versus MarkTech Pro Max. So you can now give me less money per month and I'll still be very happy. Obviously, only if you can do that. AVML saying thank you, and thank you for joining. So without further ado, this is MarkTech tuning out.